a matter of saying, like, preemptively setting an athlete up for the fact that, like, this, you are going to, not like maybe we will experience some stumbles. We're going to experience stumbles. You may very well get injured. We're going to try our best to make sure we avoid that. You're going to have some bad tournaments. That is going to happen, right? You are likely going to get in a place or a position where you're doubting yourself, but that's okay.
Hey there, welcome to episode 17 of the Golf Never Sleeps podcast. I'm your host, PGF Canada golf coach Ryan Robillard, and on this podcast, I like to share some of my thoughts and also interviews and some of my guest thoughts on how to increase your performance on the golf course and also on the driving range. This week's episode is part 2 of my interview with Tyler Ray. If you didn't go back, or if you didn't listen to part 1, which was last week's episode, please go back and listen to it. Tyler is a professional dunker turned sports performance coach. And last week's episode was a really cool deep dive into his career in dunking and how you become a professional dunker. But part 2 this week, I believe, is a little bit more practical. We get into the talking about coaching. Tyler works with a lot of explosive athletes, and he's at the forefront of getting people to jump as high as they physically possibly can. He works with basketball players, he works with volleyball players, he works with other athletes as well, and he's an avid golfer, and we really get into nuts and bolts around coaching, and we have some fantastic conversations around expectations and some different parts of the game that is more than just thinking golf course, maybe also playing the game of golf. So I'll touch base a little bit at the end, so let's jump right into part 2 of my interview with Tyler Ray. The way you've broken down a few things, I want to dive into what you do now. Mm-hmm. So now you've transitioned, you've had your time as a professional dunker. Your body has said, hey, enough is enough. It's time to transition into doing something else, obviously. How did we land where we are today, right? We're in your home, and 6 feet from here, we look over an 18-foot cliff. and there's your gym where you do all your training. What goes on down there?
What goes on down there is a combination of things. So number one, I train athletes in here. I think that was the ultimate end goal, was to have a lab per se, where people could come in and get some really detailed, focused work in, whether that's strength training or vertical jump technique, which is probably what most people know me for now, is kind of the global leader in that space, which is pretty cool. We can expand on that, obviously. Content, teaching, getting on camera, trying to just get my message and my information out as far as I possibly can, for the simple fact that I know it works. And the more hands it falls in means the more efficient jumpers we have out there, which means the better athletes we have out there. So I'm fueled by the knowledge of knowing it just works. And this gives me a great little, a great little lab to be able to perform that. So it didn't always start, obviously, in the house here. This has always been a dream, and I'm super fortunate to be able to have done this. Combination of obviously hard work and circumstance. COVID, was very hard on a lot of people, but because it caused everybody to be indoors, it kind of helped my business out a little bit. So selfishly, like, it was something that I'm thankful for. That sounds so bad, but business-wise and professionally, it was everything I needed to be able to get more eyes on what I'm doing. I've trained in a variety of locations. I started working out of more commercial gym spaces back in, when I was like 19.
Right.
And doing the normal personal trainer stuff. That's what I started as, is athletes. I think a lot of people think you can come in as a trainer or a coach, and athletes are going to be like, yeah, train me. When you're 19 and 20 years old, rewind back to when I was 19 and 20 years old, mm-hmm. right, which is 2003, too. No Instagram, no TikTok, nothing where you could have this aura about you where you got a big following and people just trust because you've got 20,000 followers that you're going to be able to teach them. There was none of that. So it was like you had to prove yourself by actually doing the work. So the only people that would let me train them at that point were like 60 and 70-year-old people that couldn't
Let's
sit,
jump.
right? And it was more just general population. That was the most valuable part of my career, was training every type of person in a gym setting, because it created such a robust troubleshooting arsenal, right? You've just gotten so used to seeing so many different things and so many different populations that when you get an athlete, you get this like hyper representation of a person, right? Someone that is so dialed in. Well, I've seen someone in that, that couldn't stand or couldn't walk. So when I'm seeing someone that is looking to jump higher or run faster, I mean, the confidence level I have for that is going to be a lot higher. I mean, getting someone walking to me is, as if not more impressive than getting someone to jump higher.
Right.
So I just had a lot of reps under my belt when I got into the athlete space. And then social media was a great catapulter of success because, again, it got way more eyes on me very, very quickly. But didn't always start like that. I mean, I had Instagram for, 5, 6, 8 years. I don't even know what year it is now. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like I had it for a long time, and I was doing the same thing that everybody else would do, which is post clips of my athletes squatting or doing, pull-ups, and they were getting a few hundred views. And it wasn't until I just posted what I was doing anyway, which is, helping athletes with jumping, that I realized that there was a huge market for it.
You said something interesting about how you feel that working with maybe the older population helped you become a little bit more diverse, because not everyone that was coming to you was a mobile 16, 17, 18, however year old elite level athlete. That's fairly or we can compare that, I think, quite a bit to the golf side as well. And sometimes what I see, where when it's another AAA hockey player boy that shows up, or a overly mobile junior girl that shows up, we can get them to do what we want them to do usually fairly quickly, or at least identify a very clear path. Where I think when we have someone that's a little bit older, and it doesn't even have to be 60 or 70 anymore, people in their 30s and 40s that don't move the way that they want, I think being able to cut our teeth as troubleshooters is so valuable. Because I feel some of the times that I've found success working with a 50 or a 60 or a 70-year-old and seeing that path has allowed me to learn how to get the message of this might take a little bit of time or failure is okay across to that hotshot kid that expects to just be, why am I not the greatest golfer on the planet? We've been working together for 1 year, as opposed to like we're on a 10-year journey. What's one thing? So I guess let's go back to those younger, high-level athletes, which I think is the majority of what you work with now.
Correct. In person is primarily high school aged, high performance athletes. Yeah.
What's the one thing you wish they would all understand that they currently don't?
It's a good question. I think that on a whole, the athletes that I have right now, simply based on the fact that I think I'm gifted the opportunity to be a bit more selective with who I have in my gym now. That hasn't always been the case. So I think this message would be to more than the athletes I have currently, which is just perspective, right? I think my athletes know when they come in here that it's not about coming in and doing a few exercises. Okay, anybody can throw exercises at you. Your neighbor can tell you to do a bunch of exercises, and it may very well get you stronger. What I do and how I kind of market myself within this space is that my job is to help you navigate the journey of being an athlete. Okay, so yeah, we're going to train. We're going to work on things to help your skill set improve, but there's a lot of time spent on the mental side of the equation, where we're really just trying to hone in perspective, expectation, how that differs from goal setting. And the advice would then be to know that the picture is a lot bigger than you think it is if your goal is to compete at the highest level. And the earlier that you can realize that it's about just settling in and investing in this journey day after day, week after week, month after month, the earlier you can accept the fact that this is not going to be handed to you next month, next year, the faster you'll get to where you're getting at. It's like I equate training and the experience of being an athlete to acquiring very tiny pieces of a very large puzzle. And every single time you make a decision in your best interest, and that could be something as simple as like, I'm just going to go to bed because rest is good for me. You get a piece of this puzzle, you put it in your puzzle, and the more pieces of the puzzle that you consistently accumulate, the faster the image on that puzzle reveals itself. And that's kind of how I've always viewed athleticism or being an athlete, is we're just trying to acquire more of those pieces of the puzzle faster. And they're everywhere.
That's really good.
Is that good? Okay.
That is absolutely fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, I think you hit it spot on, and you work with players that are playing volleyball, that are playing basketball, and something that we notice a lot in golf, it is a long journey, but especially when we're talking junior players, they always feel there's a hard stop, which is post-secondary, right? Do I make it to play on a golf scholarship, or do I make it to Division I golf? And something that I've had happen recently, the last couple of years, is we have players that get to that point where the time comes and they've invested for several years, and their family has invested a lot of time, and they don't check that box. They don't get the scholarship offer that they want. Financially, it doesn't make sense for them and their family to dive in. And the thing that I need to continue to do a better job of is make them understand that this, although we call it a journey, there is no guarantee that X amount of hours is going to equal this exact result.
Correct.
Instead of just spending time saying, like, it's all about your grade 11 summer, that grade 11 summer is part of the journey. There's nothing preventing any junior golfer from turning into a professional golfer because they didn't make it to a golf scholarship in the U.S. And I actually have a player that we're going through this conversation right now where they're playing the what if game. And they say, what if I don't go to the U.S.? I said, what's stopping you from becoming the best player in Canada, in the Canadian colleges and universities? What is stopping you from continuing to play golf and try to have an amateur career into your 20s? I said, nothing is stopping you. What's stopping you right now is you believe that your athletic career lives or dies with if we get this golf scholarship or not at 15 or 16 years old. Hey, I hope you're enjoying this podcast episode. If you are, I have a favor to ask. If you're watching on YouTube, please make sure that you subscribe to this channel, like this video, and make sure you hit that bell to make sure you get notified on when a new episode drops. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts, please make sure you subscribe there as well. But if you could leave me a rating, wherever you're listening or watching, if you do those things for me, it really helps the podcast grow and also motivates me to put out more content. And as always, on any platform, if you ever have any questions, please reach out, let me know. I answered every comment. Now let's get you back to your episode. What you said was so spot on, and I'm glad I'm kind of saying this so I can go back and remind myself. It is a long journey, and we will always have those goals, the scholarship, or by this time or by that time. But whether we succeed or not, that doesn't mean the journey was a waste of time, and very rarely does that ever mean that your journey ends then.
I completely agree. I think that's that perspective that we were talking about before, is the earlier you realize that big picture, the more unencumbered you can attack the next step.
Yeah.
Right. And you don't feel kind of weighted down by what you've created, which in a lot of ways aren't goals. And I think a lot of athletes need to ask themselves some honest questions. Like, do you have goals or do you have expectations for yourself? Because having an expectation is very different. Like I had a goal. Like initially I was young, right? Like I wanted to go to the US and do track and field for a D1 school. And at the end of the day, that wasn't in my cards, but I didn't expect it. Okay, I knew that it's very competitive. I knew that that's not always, and what happened was I was able to stay local, like you're saying, stay in Canada, compete for the best school in Canada.
Right.
We won 4 national championships while I was there, gave me some opportunities to learn from some of the best coaches I've ever met, and ultimately put me on the course to this part of my career, which I didn't know at the time. Golf, I think, is one of those excellent sports that allows you to be able to continually make improvement for a long time. I mean, I don't know the stats on it. I'm still kind of newer to the realm of golf, but I have to imagine there are athletes and players that didn't break onto the professional scene until well into their late 20s, 30s, 40s, and probably later on, that just grinded in these kind of lower level, tours, grinded as maybe local pros and played tournaments here and there, that eventually had their break when it was the right time for them. So
I think probably to that point, the thing that we can say for sure, being the best in the world at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 has very little correlation on if they're going to become a PGA Tour winner.
that's a good point.
Where I think it's funny, a couple of the players so the Windsor Championship, right, the PGA Tour Canada event that's been hosted at Ambassador 3 times in the last 5 years with a little COVID intermission, and watching the players that have come through there and the past that they've had, the winner of the second Windsor Championship, Dawson Armstrong, was a Division III golfer. And after his win the following year, he has gone on to the Korn Ferry Tour, and I believe he's had 3 fairly successful years on the Korn Ferry Tour, and it's realistic to assume that he may end up at the next level. And I think if I was to go to a player right now and say, like, you can play Division III golf and still become a tour player, I think some juniors would just have their minds blown.
Sure.
Like, they don't have that perspective.
Absolutely. No, those are great points. It's not a linear progression. I think that's
Right.
at the end of the case. It's not a linear progression. It's not a staircase where it's just like one step to the next, and at the very top there's a door you walk through and there's your goals and dreams, right?
Right.
There's a lot of steps that, number one, might not be there. Number two, there might be a landing that you got to hang out in for a while before
Right.
you can go up. So it's like any visual you can have, and I think I spend a lot of time with athletes doing that. Is it's helpful to have a big ass whiteboard in your gym, because I visualize things. There's a little one
this
here.
This is the mini one, yeah. This is the mini one behind us.
Yes, a lot of people would meet me and not realize out of the gate that I'm just a huge nerd. Like, Kelly will go, "Why are you still in the gym on that whiteboard?" I got little chill hop vibes in the background, and I'm just thinking and writing. But with
Right.
athletes, it's nice because you can, in the middle of a session, when you're trying to get a point across, I can just flip around and draw it. And a lot of times when they can see it, it's more tangible to them. And whatever type of analogy you need to use for a specific athlete, you just got to keep searching for them.
So it's not linear. It's definitely not linear. How do you handle getting the message across when it's going backwards? You have a player that takes a step back. They have a bad semester. They have a tough summer, and they feel like they are, quote unquote, worse than they were that time 6 months prior. I'm assuming, unless you literally are the greatest coach of all time, I'm assuming you've had some players that you kind of look back, and whether you meet with the parents or whatever, you're like, you know what? This has been a tough half year. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's the key message you're trying to get across there?
It's not unfortunate. It's necessary. I think at the end of the day, like, it's very rare you're going to meet any professional, substantial athlete that has had every step move forward. So yeah, it's just a matter of saying, like, preemptively setting an athlete up for the fact that, like, this, you are going to, not like maybe we will experience some stumbles. We're going to experience stumbles. You may very well get injured. We're going to try our best to make sure we avoid that. You're going to have some bad tournaments. That is going to happen, right? You are likely going to get in a place or a position where you're doubting yourself, but that's okay. So for me, I think I spent a little bit more time with the mental health side of things than I realized with an athlete, largely because, like, my own struggles with mental health. So I think and I'm not saying like we're talking about severe mental health issues, but more about the mental health of an athlete as they progress through this journey, right? It is peaks and valleys. Athletes get obsessed with the feeling of success because it makes you feel invincible. Like, it validates everything you've done, and the highs are extremely high. Right. But the other side of an extremely high is an extremely low, right? That's how we get that feeling of extremely high. We have that kind of those polarizing up and downs. So I think if we preemptively set an athlete up to know that it's not a case of if, it's a case of when, then when that moment happens, it's simply highlighting, we talked about this. This is that moment, right? This is that moment, but we're equipped for it because we knew this moment was coming. There's nothing about this moment that dictates your effort There's nothing about this moment that indicates that you are moving backward. We're just facing a hurdle.
Right.
And this is the hurdle we've talked about before. You have to give them space to be able to like mourn that moment, I think. And that's another thing that as coaches, we want nothing more than to solve every problem for our athlete, quickly get them out of a rut, quickly make them feel that moment of success. But that's just not the case, right? We know it's not linear. And that's the case on a coach's side as well. It's not going to be linear. So as long as we expect that to happen, we can preemptively communicate that to our athletes. I think it serves to get them out of those moments faster, but not avoid them, because it's impossible.
That's very well said. And it actually kind of leads me into the next thing I want to talk about. You posted a video on your Instagram page on August 21st, and I bookmarked it because when I watched that video, that kind of really, we've known each other a little bit for, I think, maybe roughly a year or so. But when I saw you post this video, that's when I was like, I really want to get together and pick his brain a little bit. It was you talking to athletes, and the quote or the excerpt from the video was something along the lines of, I need you to feel like you want to do this more than anything in the world, but be totally fine if we don't do it. That's not judging ourselves. That is just understanding that being an athlete is a journey.
Yeah.
That was, I think you literally, if we were to go back, you literally just answered that question, or kind of the point I was pull there. I think the explanation that it's a journey is so important. And how many athletes do you work with that are older, like that are not? Do you have any that are older?
So currently, I train one individual who's 40, who is really just trying to become healthier, but through an athletic lens. I've trained plenty of athletes that we'll call them mature athletes, typically athletes that are somewhere in the 30 plus ballpark, but numerous amounts of them over the years.
Because some of the adults that I work with, this exact same conversation and setup applies. Mr. Jones, who's 40, who wants to go from a 15 handicap to a 3 handicap, and asks how long it's going to take. And sometimes we have to look at him and say, well, does it matter how long it takes? Like, are you in or not? It might take 7 years. It might take 3 years. But I need you to understand that this is going to take some time. We can't set a time limit on it. You need to be very open and honest with the fact that there's going to be ups and downs. We're going to have some highs. We're going to have some lows. But we're always moving forward. We're never going to sit neutral. We're always going to feel like we're moving forward.
I remember the quote. I use it often. It's something that has resonated with me in the past. I think what you and I, this is why I like you as well, is you and I share a quality that is extremely under-discussed in a coach. That's the ability to communicate. At the end of the day, all the best exercises, all the best drills are just scratching the surface of how you help somebody. So I've tried to find usable quotes, and I wouldn't even necessarily consider that a quote. It's something I said at one point that really resonated with an athlete. And as I said it, I went, oh, this is going to be helpful.
Right.
It's about creating your environment. And in the world of jumping, when it comes to like testing an athlete, right? Say, hey, today we're going to test. We're creating a stressful environment by using the word test, right? Yeah. Everybody wants to perform well in a test. Tests usually exhibit some type of anxious response. Anxiety in the body when it comes to explosive output is like kryptonite. Your central nervous system does not respond as quickly or as efficiently when it's under stress, when cortisol levels are extremely high. So the phrasing of you have to want this more than anything in the world, but simultaneously be incredibly okay if it doesn't happen, is really just letting yourself off the hook before the attempt. Right. And
to bring the pressure down.
To bring the pressure down, because you know what? You may very well jump and touch the highest you've ever jumped. The likelihood is those moments are going to happen few and far between, right? The earth, the sun, and the moon all line up perfectly, and all of a sudden, boom, gravity's a little different and I jump higher. But that's not, to me, the mark of vertical jump improvement. I talked about this today on a piece of content. It's like, what I'm looking for is not the ceiling, it's the floor. I'm looking for that floor to come up so that your worst efforts are now better than your best used to be. And if you can communicate that in a testing setting where it's like, I don't care if your jump is higher than it was last time, but I would love to see all of our jumps be pretty solid today. It's got to be the same in a golf setting where you might be working on a specific feel for that session, and they're not going to have it on every attempt. They're not going to have it on every swing. I mean, anybody that's been on a golf course once knows that. Like you have something for a moment, it's fleeting, it's gone. But it's the acquisition of that, and then also not judging yourself when you shank one off into the woods. Like, best players in the world hit bad shots, and probably more often than you think.
Right.
And that's a cool lens to be able to have, right? Is to know that no matter how good you get, like golf is this is why I love golf now. Like it's an outlet for me that is easier on my body, number one. Number two, with my mental health journey, it's incredibly therapeutic and a direct reflection of my mind. It's a direct reflection of where my head's at in that moment. I golfed yesterday, and it was the first time in a while that I didn't have a great time. and this is, I was with my dad, my brother, excuse me, and my wife. Great hanging out. And
right.
It was a great experience to bond. Golf-wise, I just wasn't there, and it's largely because even before I got to the golf course, I was elsewhere. I was elsewhere in my mind. And it's like I caught myself 2 or 3 times on the course going like, well, you're just not here.
Yeah.
It's a direct reflection. So for me, it helps me with my own mental health in the sense of it's a mirror. Golf that's what it is to me. It's just a mirror.
Yeah. I had a player talk about them being annoyed at when they struggle, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I hate having bad days on the golf course. Like, how do we get away from them? And I kind of stopped and I'm like, you have a job, right? Mm-hmm. They go, yeah. And I asked, you ever have a bad day at work? Well, yeah, you have bad days all the time. And I just kind of paused for a second, and I think he was kind of like, oh. He's like, what I'm asking for is actually impossible. And I said, correct. Back to your ceiling and floor analogy, going into off-season, something we talk a lot about is increasing club head speed. Mm-hmm. And especially for all players that usually want to hit the golf ball farther.
Love it.
Increase their club head speed. And I think, to your point, as much as we're trying to raise the ceiling, and every time I see them, we hope that they eclipse their fastest swing ever, it has a lot more to do with raising that floor so that when if they started swinging 100 miles an hour, yes, there's a chance that peak when they do hit it is 112 miles an hour. But I really hope that they realize that when their floor goes from 100 to 106, mm-hmm. that they're going to reap the benefits as a result.
Absolutely.
This has been a fantastic conversation.
Thanks.
Feels like it could be part 1 of 11.
Listen, get me on a microphone. I have no problem. Love chatting.
I think next time I might show up in some gym shorts, and maybe we could. I would love to go through the test.
We can test your vertical. We can do an official, like NBA sanctioned vertical jump. It'll be as sanctioned as you're going to find anywhere.
I think it would be really cool to talk vertical jump, because when we talk about helping players hit the golf ball farther, the thing that has the most impact in the forces we can generate is vertical force, ground reaction forces, right? I'm sure in basketball or in the world of jumping, it's said a little bit differently, but I think a lot of it kind of runs in parallel. Can we do a few rapid fire questions?
I'm into it, man. Let's do it.
Like no more than 10 seconds, no more than 5 words.
This is the hardest part for
I know.
me, is compressing my thoughts into 10 seconds, but I'm going to do my best for you.
All right. Question number 1. What is your most important warm-up drill or move before a round of golf? You're gonna go over 10 seconds.
My most important warm-up drill before a round of golf is thoracic rotation. For me specifically, having a left shoulder injury, so I try to make sure that it gets moving. Okay.
Well done.
Thank you.
A little bit over. Longest drive you've ever hit?
On TrackMan, 391. Whoa. On the course, probably a little further with a downhill and a hard fairway.
What's your club head speed?
It can get up as high as 135. Ball speed PR is 194. That being said, I don't that's not my on-course speed.
I need everyone to start jumping higher.
It's helpful to have a baseline of explode. That's how I got into golf, was through long drive. I just wanted to swing the club and hit the ball really far. Now I'm like, it's more impressive to keep it on the course.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. And it feels better on my body.
Yeah. Favorite on-course drink?
Oh, I mean, aside from water, I would say like a nice little triple bogey lager. Give me a triple
Okay.
bogey all day.
Okay. I asked this question to my previous guests, and they really caught me off guard. I said, favorite on-course drink? He said, a double shot of Jameson.
Yoip.
And I was like, well, what's your favorite off-course drink?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
favorite.
Alcohol in sports for me, like I can do like a beer around, and I'm okay. But
Yeah.
yeah, other than that, I start to get a little wonky.
Okay. Favorite off-the-course drink?
Favorite off the course drink, probably like coffee.
Okay.
I like a nice cup of coffee.
Are you like are you a coffee expert or
Not at all.
okay, just any coffee. Just
like-
grind some beans,
yeah,
slap
like-
some water on it.
Yeah, hot bean water.
Okay.
Give me some,
Noted.
Give me some hot bean water.
I'm going to go buy the domain name when I get home. hotbeanwater.com.
.org.
Last one. Favorite podcast or favorite book? You can only pick one, but depending on what you spend more time consuming.
Recently, Think Like a Monk, Jay Shetty was a great read, great perspective-setting book.
Okay.
Podcast, Andrew, the Huberman podcast. I had to slip it in there.
Yeah, you did.
I can't go anymore.
Yeah.
Stop talking.
Tyler, where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, I mean, you can follow me on Instagram at JumpGuyTy. Also, my business channel is at Project Pure Athlete. It's not as active anymore. I've kind of put all my effort into my own personal channel. You can Google me if you want. It's not a flex. You probably just put the name in there with the word jump or something afterwards.
That's exactly what I did in my research.
You can
Tyler
do that.
Rate Jump.
Jump, and there's some articles and stuff on there. We have a website, projectpureathlete.com. And yeah, or you can come to my house. I'm not going to tell you where it is, but reach out and then I will.
So Tyler, you are a professional dunker turned coach, and I think you're actually a very interesting person, and you have such a diverse knowledge base. This has been fantastic. Thanks all for coming on.
Appreciate it, Ryan.
man.
Thank you. Boom.
Good. Hey, just checking in at the end. That was a fantastic interview. I hope you took a lot away from it. Again, if you didn't watch part one, please go back and watch part one. But that was the end of our interview with Tyler. Again, if you want to find Tyler, you can find him on Instagram at JumpGuyTy. That's all for this week. I hope you have a fantastic week, and we'll see you next Tuesday for another episode of the Golf Never Sleeps podcast. Happy golfing.